Husband's been secretly taking trips to see a woman in another city, lying about work trips, and I'm saying that out loud like I'm reading the headline of my own life because sometimes it helps to hear the sentence bounce off the walls. I'm June, I'm 33, and I'm a train conductor. Yes, seriously, the hat, the whistle, the whole thing. And maybe that's why the timetable of his lies snapped into place for me the way a delayed service eventually aligns with the platform clock. I live in schedules, I count minutes for a living. And the morning I realized my marriage had been leaving on track 2 while I was still waving at track 1 was a Monday that smelled like coffee and cold metal. It started with lanyards. Corporate lanyards, specifically. My husband, Evan, 35, product manager, gentle with small appliances and unnecessarily confident around whiteboards, had been racking up what he called micro-conferences. 2 days in Phoenix for user empathy, 1.5 in Portland for a roadmap intensive, 3 in Charlotte where, and I quote, the magic happens. The lanyards came home in his bag, tossed on our whole table like souvenirs nobody asked for. I hang things up for a living, sunlight at 7:05 a minute on every, so visual clutter makes me itchy. I started putting the lanyards in a drawer with takeout chopsticks and coupons we pretend to use. The drawer got crowded with evidence of enthusiasm. The crack, when it appeared, wasn't lipstick on a collar or a receipt for a hotel room with strawberries, it was the app one used for rail turnarounds. I swear this isn't a stretch. The app pings you with service advisories from every city we connect to, and one night, dead on my feet after a double shift, I got a delayed departure alert for the exact carrier Evan said he'd flown home on. His flight number pinged my brain because he's proud when he finds a bargain and likes to show me the matrix of it. The carrier was delayed 6 hours. He'd texted me a photo of an airport beer at 5:15 and then a photo of our cat at 8:10. The math didn't care about cute. I stared at the beer photo like it would confess. The background wasn't an airport, not unless airports now have exposed brick plants that weren't depressed and a framed black and white photo of a bridge I know belongs to a city not near Charlotte. And look, I run trains, I know bridges. This one was a giveaway. Hotel bar, he'd written when he sent it. My body, which keeps its own ledger, wrote back to my brain, we are not idiots. I didn't confront him then. I hate yelling as a sport. I went to bed and dreamed all night in platform announcements, my voice high and cheerful for stations I didn't want to visit. Next stop, denial, next stop, stomachache, next stop, check the calendar. He left for Phoenix on Wednesday. I kissed him at the door and watched him walk down our apartment hall like a person who knows which corners will squeak. The stairwell light flickered like a bad omen on a TV show. I laughed at myself for noticing. You figure out early in this job whether you're a watcher or a rusher. I'm a watcher. It's why I'm good at noticing a grandmother on the third car looking for a seat, why I spot trouble before the doors close. I waited until the elevator groaned shut, then I opened his drawer, not the underwear one, we're not amateurs, the one with tech and cables and the lanyards he pretended weren't trophies. At the very back sat a slim field notebook the color of black coffee, elastic band giving it an urgent little mouth. I pulled it out and felt like a burglar in a fable. I didn't read it right away. I put it on the kitchen table and stood there with my hands on either side of it like I was bracing for turbulence. I told myself 3 things the way I brief my own heart before a rough stretch of track. If it's nothing, you put it back and you apologize to the air. If it's something, you decide what kind of person you're going to be about it. If it's a lot, call Lila. Lila is my older sister who thinks therapy is a hobby and has a laugh that makes furniture friendlier. I texted her a single train emoji and she wrote back, do I need boots or soup? Soup, I wrote. And possibly a tarp. The notebook was boring at first, which I resented. Meeting notes in Evan's overly tidy hand, Q3 OKRs, stakeholders, a doodle of a rocket ship that looks like all the rocket ships drawn by well-meaning men who think design can heal loneliness. Then, 6 pages in, a switch. The handwriting changed slant. The tone loosened, the way a tie gets loosened after you remember your neck is part of your body. Thursday, brunch at the place with the window plants, he'd written. S wore the yellow dress with the white buttons and tried all 3 jams like she was conducting an orchestra. S, I reread the letter like my eyes had stuttered. S, not a vendor. Not an OKR. Not a rocket. He described the light. He described a laugh I didn't recognize using an adjective I hate, lilting. He described walking alongside a river I know belongs to a city that is not Phoenix. He used the phrase felt possible about a crosswalk. There was a pressed flower between 2 pages, the kind of thing people do when they want romance to be nature and then misfile it. I put the notebook down very carefully because it turns out the sound a heart makes when it cracks is quiet, and I didn't want to drown it out. The part of me trained to notice human needs put a kettle on. The part of me trained to notice human patterns flipped his work laptop open. He tells me his passwords like you tell the person you share a bed with where the fire extinguisher is. I typed, I winced, I had access. I wasn't sure at whom the apology would be owed. Inbox. Calendars. Slack. I didn't go full detective. I don't like who I am when I snoop, but I looked for a thing I already knew I would find. Synced Sparks SF, said a calendar entry, though the lanyard hanging from last week's trip said Charlotte. Attached to the entry were directions to a boutique hotel I recognized from the beer photo and a dinner reservation for 2 with a note, window please. Under guests, Sophie. If you're waiting for rage, it came late. First came the weirdest grief. I liked that he'd asked for a window. I liked the part of him that cares about light. That part had not been fake. It had just been pointed elsewhere. And then the second wave, the pettiness, welcome and hot. I wanted to say, Sophie is not a city, and slam a train door in a metaphor that would make me feel better for 4 seconds. I closed everything. I put the notebook back. I sat at the table and ate crackers out of the sleeve like a raccoon, and then I called Lila. She came with miso soup and ginger and a look that said, there is nothing you can tell me that will make me hold you smaller. I told her. She listened. Do you want to know all the things, she asked, or just enough to choose your next right thing? Just enough, I said, surprising both of us. Okay, she said. What's his flight number? I told her. I told her the hotel. I told her my stomach. She nodded like a conductor seeing a signal and pulled her laptop out, the way our mother pulls pie crust from thin air. He's in San Francisco, she said 5 keystrokes later. He'll come home with sourdough in him. You want me to come over when he gets back? No, I said. I want you to be on standby with your megaphone. I didn't confront him when he called that night from Charlotte. He told me a story about a whiteboard mishap that sounded borrowed from TV. I said at useful intervals and then I said very softly because softness is sometimes the sound of a knife being clean, bring me back a magnet. He laughed, relieved. Always. I met him at the airport because I felt like being inconvenient. He came out of arrivals with a paper bag and an expression that belonged to a man who believes in movies. He kissed me, he held me, he smelled like somebody else's shower gel and San Francisco Bay wind. I took the bag. The magnet said I red hot #CLT. The confrontation did not happen at baggage claim because I am not a people pleaser in public. I waited until we were home and the cat had judged him and the bag was open. How's Sophie? I asked, as neutrally as I announce a delayed local. He did that flicker, strobe light over a lake, the microsecond when the lie hasn't put on its shoes yet. Who, he said, which is an answer, and I put the notebook on the counter. He looked at it. He didn't confess immediately. He didn't double down either. He put his hands on the granite like he had to hold the countertop on the ground. Okay, he said. Okay. He's Saturday. It is always interesting in court and in kitchens when people choose to sit. It's the body remembering it needs the earth. I'll make this easy, I said, because I'm not orchestrating a scavenger hunt. Yes or no questions. Did you go to San Francisco? Yes. Did you lie about Charlotte? Yes. Is Sophie a coworker? No. Did you meet her at a conference? No. He looked at his hands. On the train, he said, and the universe rolled her eyes at me for not seeing the setup coming. On my train, I said, and he shook his head like he could soften the blow by making it sound poetic instead of exact. Heading north, he said. I was coming back from, he stopped because he remembered the invention he'd told me. She had a suitcase with stickers that should have been annoying but weren't. We talked about whether the chime that plays before announcements is designed to soothe or to control. She knew the bridge in the photo. He made a noise that was nothing and everything. We made jokes, June. About timetables. We made a joke about fate, and we didn't say the word fate because we're both too modern for that word, but we said the modern version. That was months ago. And then, I said, and he nodded like we were taking turns being the adult. And then I started arranging trips around the cities she'd be in for work, he said, which is the sort of sentence you can only say in a room where you hope someone will still look at you after it lands. And when there wasn't an overlap, I made one. I told myself I was networking. I told myself I was doing research on the version of me that believed in window seats and good coffee. Did you sleep with her? I asked. He didn't gulp. He just said, yes, and I hated him for giving me the decency of a straight answer because it meant I didn't get to ride the high of catching him in the stumble. I stood there with my suitcase heart sliding off the luggage carousel. Do you want to leave? I asked, because some questions are scaffolding and some are dynamite, and this one told me what the building was made of. He shook his head so fast it made him look like a boy. No, he said. I want to stop treating my life like a layover. We have a tiny kitchen. It fit the worst version of us surprisingly well. Then here's what happens, I said, because my job teaches me that the difference between chaos and civilization is instructions. You email her while I watch and you say it's over, and you don't do it kindly because kind is often a con you run on yourself. You tell your manager you're not traveling for a quarter. You give me your flight points passwords not because I will use them but because I don't want them whispering to you in the night. You find a therapist. We find a therapist. We do not make this about how I work with trains, and oh the irony, we make this about how you got bored and then you went shopping for a witness. And then you sleep in the guest room, and we don't talk about forgiveness for at least 8 weeks because it's a muscle, not a coupon, and mine needs physical therapy. He nodded. He opened his laptop. He wrote a message that was both cowardly and true. I have been lying, it began, which is both insufficient and the only way to begin a sentence like that. He pressed send. He put his face in his hands. He said, I am so sorry, and I believed he was sorry, but belief is not a bridge, it's a ferry and it goes back and forth. Do you want the worst part? It wasn't sex or the cities. It was the notebook. It was that he wrote her down. I collect departures and arrivals for strangers. He had been collecting a life around himself and stashing it near our ceiling. I stood on the dining chair and put the notebook on the highest shelf we own, not because I was going to keep it forever but because I wanted to be taller than it. Then I called Lila and she came over with soup and a look that said, I will help you move or I will help you marinate, you pick. We chose marinate. It's not a glamorous choice. It tastes like salt and thyme. He begged for structure because my husband is good at doing the homework once he realizes he's not the teacher. He made a list of the cities he'd lied about and we pinned them to a corkboard like crimes. We sat with a couples therapist named Eddie who wore shirts the color of honesty and asked us not why he did it but what he was trying to say. He said, I wanted someone to look at me like I was a possibility. I said, me too, but I kept calling it our mortgage and thought that would be sexy enough eventually. Eddie made us speak in present tense when we wanted to run into nostalgia. Present tense is heavy. It saved our necks. Sophie texted me once because of course she did. People think closure is a phone plan. I didn't know he hadn't told you, she wrote. I told him I couldn't keep being the reason he rehearsed honesty without performing it. I stared at the text long enough to memorize the bubbles. Then I typed a sentence that made every bone in my body both ache and applaud. There isn't a version of this where we become friends. She wrote back, I agree. I blocked her, not because I think blocks are bravery, but because I needed fewer places for weather to enter. Some days after that felt like walking a platform in wind you can lean against. Some days felt like a quiet, clear morning when the announcements are simple and you remember that your job is to get people home. He cancelled trips. He took the train with me to Jersey City one Saturday and sat at the back, listening to my voice over the intercom with an expression I could have either punched or kissed. He learned to send me pictures of his hotel room without angles when he did have to travel. Just a bed, ugly carpet, the universal beige that shouts fidelity in a hoarse whisper. We said, "I'm lonely" out loud and learned not to make the other person fix it on command. We made Thursday's date night because Thursday hated me first. A month later I took a solo trip because if he could chase a window, I could chase a horizon that didn't have his mouth on it. I rode to Boston in the quiet car and ate a muffin that didn't change the world. I stood on a bridge and made a joke in my head about chimes. I texted Lila a picture of my face and she wrote back, "You look like a person with their own ticket." I laughed out loud and a seagull judged me. Fair. You want an ending from me. I hate to disappoint you, but trains don't end, they turn around. We're still married. He sleeps in our bed again. Some mornings I wake at 4 a.m. because my body thinks it's time to announce something, and the announcement is just this: you are here. I say it out loud to us, even if he's asleep. I am not a fool. I'm a conductor. My job is to notice the track and make choices. I do spot checks. Where did you have lunch? What's the nicest thing you didn't tell me today? When did you think about leaving and decide not to? He answers, not gracefully but actually, and I tuck the answers into a drawer that also holds coupons. Some we use. Some expire. On Thursdays sometimes we walk to the river. Not our river, we borrowed theirs after all that, took the crosswalk like polite people, sat on a bench and didn't pretend it forgave us. He tells me about a bridge from his boyhood that trembled when trucks crossed and how he liked the feeling in his feet. I tell him about the names of arrivals I love saying, Hoboken, Secaucus, how they feel like flavors. We don't mention Sophie. Not because she's a ghost, but because this isn't her station anymore. When the wind picks up, he leans toward me like a man who knows which way to keep a hat. If you are where I was, standing in a kitchen with a notebook and a magnet from the wrong airport, this is the only timetable I can offer. You are allowed to need proof and you are allowed to stop needing it. You are allowed to be petty and righteous and then boring and then brave. You are allowed to ask for window seats and still pick the aisle. You are allowed to make rules. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to stay and refuse to be a layover. And if you happen to be a person who knows the sound a train makes when it breathes, you are allowed to demand that sound from your life too. That slow, steady exhale that means movement has begun, not in circles, not for show, but toward the place you said out loud you wanted to go. Tonight after dinner, I labeled the junk drawer. Small things, I wrote, neat as a station agent. Inside, light and dumb and human. Chopsticks, coupons, 3 lanyards I haven't thrown out because I'm not ready, a magnet with its live face-up, and a pen that writes too well. He came in, leaned on the counter, and asked, "Do we have time for a walk before your early shift?" And I said yes, which is a word I use sparingly now, and we put on jackets and left the apartment like the whole way belonged to us again, and somewhere a timetable was aligning and I didn't need to check it because my feet were already moving, and that, for now, was the only proof I wanted.